The Pacific Coast Highway of California tracks along the planet's largest ocean. Drivers get a seaward gaze unblocked by land for thousands of miles. But Highway 1 also travels along the edge of American culture. It cuts through land transformed by humans, and land that hasn't changed for millennia. In some parts of California, Highway 1 is the only way through. And some days, nature tries its hardest to keep you from passing at all. The road heads straight into the heart of America's left coast, a city born overnight with the gold rush that boasts America's most iconic bridge and most notorious prison. The Pacific Coast Highway is one of the world's most scenic drives. But the road is more than that. It's a pilgrimage, a reconnection to California's history, its nature, its mythology. Today, we're going to take that journey from the air. A journey through the spirit of California, through the spirit of America. Some call it the most beautiful drive in the world. California's Highway 1, also called the Pacific Coast Highway, runs nearly the length of the state. But some of the most stunning stretches of the road wind from San Simeon in the south up through Big Sur to San Francisco and to Point Reyes, one of the most dangerous sections on the San Andreas Fault. We start our journey along the Pacific Coast Highway in San Simeon. It was here, thousands of feet above the Pacific, that a young boy with dreams larger than life spent his summers camping. And it was here that he returned, 50 years later, a newspaper magnate, to build a palace to rival the greatest in Europe. Hearst Castle. William Randolph Hearst owned all of this land. His estate covered an area half the size of Rhode Island. Hearst was the Rupert Murdoch of the early 20th century. Through his 36 newspapers, he tried to control the country's political agenda. And at Hearst Castle, he entertained the powerful and luminous. Before Highway 1 was built, his guests had to arrive by boat. Once on the castle's private drive, they'd see Hearst's zoo loose upon the hills. Antelopes, zebras, bison, camels, kangaroos, even giraffes. Guests included Hollywood's elite, Charlie Chaplin, Clark Gable, Joan Crawford, Cary Grant. Stars came to Hearst Castle. They had little choice. Turn down an invitation from Hearst and your career could be over. Hollywood director Orson Welles found the tycoon in his castle an irresistible target. His 1941 film, Citizen Kane, was set at a palace called Xanadu, where a ruthless tyrant lived with his talentless second wife. Hearst retaliated by nearly ruining Welles' career. The castle itself is modeled after a medieval cathedral Hearst had admired in Spain. George Bernard Shaw said, "It was the place God would have built if he had the money." Hearst's guests stayed in chateaux surrounding the main house. Hearst's bedroom was at the front of the castle between the two towers and overlooking the Pacific. His mistress's bedroom was just next door. Altogether, the estate is a hodgepodge of European styles, a mosaic of Hearst's memories and obsessions. He spent 30 years and millions of dollars building this estate. Hearst died before it was completed. And after his death in 1951, the castle was donated to the state of California. Now more than 1 million people visit every year. You can even throw your own private party for $16,000. Behind San Simeon, Lake Nacimiento and the wine country of Paso Robles offer a refuge from big city life. This winding waterway is actually one of the state's top recreational lakes. Engineers dammed the Nacimiento River in the 1960s, creating a reservoir with 165 miles of shoreline and countless coves. Its calm, temperate waters make it ideal for water skiing. There's no speed limit on the lake, making it slightly dangerous, but heaven for anything that revs. The greatest attraction might be the feisty white bass. These voracious fish aren't native to California, making it unlawful to introduce them to most of California's waters. But white bass are allowed at Lake Nacimiento, where there's no way out, except on a fisherman's line. A little further inland, the oak-covered foothills give way to the farmland of Paso Robles. Once covered in cattle and vegetables, acre after acre in Paso Robles is increasingly staked with grapevines. The region just south of Paso was featured in the 2004 movie Sideways. That film turned vineyards growing Pinot Noir into stars overnight. Sales of the wine shot up 70% across the country. But Paso itself is the new star of the Central Coast wine explosion. It's the fastest growing region in California's $3 billion wine industry. Vineyards have been in production here since the late 19th century, but most often, grapes were shipped north to the wineries of Sonoma and Napa Valley. But in the 1980s, more vineyards in Paso started making their own wine. And within the last decade alone, the number of winemakers has tripled here. Some 26,000 acres of vineyards now feed 170 local wineries. It takes 6 to 8 clusters of grapes to produce a bottle of wine. That's about 200 grapes a glass. Big reds are Paso's signature: Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Syrah, and Zinfandel. Heat and limestone are the keys. A long growing season with vines fed by limestone-rich hills makes for muscular, powerful wines. Farmers have transformed the land and economy of California, but nature hasn't entirely surrendered the coast. Fog is never far from the Pacific Coast Highway. On summer days, it shrouds the road. Sometimes, the fog devours it. It sweeps in from the Pacific as warm summer air from the west hits the cold coastal waters. These waters cool the air flowing over. It condenses into a dense mist and creeps inland, up over the mountains. It's a local pastime to talk about all the different sizes and shapes the fog forms. The fog can sneak up on you, like the American poet Carl Sandburg once described, on little cat feet. Other times, it hits like a dump truck. But you don't need fog to make the drive along Big Sur treacherous. Some of the most dangerous twists on Highway 1 are here, where the Santa Lucia Mountains crash into the sea. This 90-mile coastline is a rocky world of cliffs and waterfalls. Millions of years of seismic action have shaped Big Sur. Tectonic plates under tremendous pressure are grinding against each other here, constantly pushing the mountains toward the sky. Highway 1 is the only way through Big Sur. In some places, the road was blasted out of the mountainside. In other places, Highway 1's engineers made old roads obsolete, casting bridges across canyons. The most famous is Bixby Creek Bridge, the location of an untold number of car commercials. Bixby is one of the world's highest single-arch bridges. It rises 260 feet above the canyon floor and stretches more than 700 feet across. It's a feat of engineering, built into walls of crumbling granite. Highway 1 opened here in 1937, but Big Sur remains relatively uninhabited. Just a few thousand people live here. And its shoreline looks much like it did when the first Spanish explorers set sight on it hundreds of years ago. It's a fearful-looking coast from the sea. One of the most dangerous spots is Point Sur. But since the late 19th century, this lighthouse has helped protect mariners. It sits on volcanic rock, and until Highway 1 was built, it was a pretty isolated existence for the lighthouse keepers. They were more likely to get a visit from a prehistoric animal than the mailman. Once upon a time, California condors made terrifying descents down these cliffs. They flew on huge black wings, 10 feet wide from tip to tip. And at the bottom, swarms of condors would rip into the carcasses of whales. Condors flew these hills for millions of years until they disappeared in the 1950s. But a zoo breeding program has brought the condor back. Sightings are still extremely rare, yet every so often, a driver along Highway 1 can peer down and see North America's largest bird once again feasting at the shore. Just up the coast from Big Sur is Carmel. It was here that an 18th century priest ended a journey that took him through hundreds of miles of wilderness. In 1771, Father Junipero Serra chose Carmel as the headquarters for what would become a string of 21 Spanish missions. These missions cemented Catholic Spain's control over California. Carmel is far from wild these days. Tourists come for the Tony art galleries and boutiques. Town laws are strict. If you hit a tree with a car and leave the scene, you could be charged with hit and run. Hollywood tough guy Clint Eastwood loosened things up a bit during